Good evening, everyone. Seems like the host has not joined the meeting yet.
Number will go up.
Please correct quickly, sir.
Can we start?
Please.
Hello. Good evening, dear students.
Hello, sir. Good evening.
Yeah, we just start up.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Yes, good evening, everybody.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir.
Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Gurmeet Singh Ji,
Good evening, sir.
persons of this workshop, Professor Clement, Lieutenant Commander Rajkumar, and Dr. Binu Zukaria, and my dear all distance students. This Directorate of Distance was established in the year 1995 for offering PG and UG program, and particularly in the need-based and market-driven and skill-oriented courses. Now, the Directorate of Distance Education is offering 8 undergraduate programs, 4 PG programs, and 80 MBA programs that are being approved by AICTE and DEB UGC in New Delhi. On the occasion of Silver Jubilee celebrations, Directorate of Distance Education, Pondicherry University, organizing a series of the workshops, lectures from distinguished academicians, administrators, and management professionals. Most of these lectures are arranged on Saturdays for the convenience of the distance students. And under this series, Directorate of Distance Education, in collaboration with the Department of English, is organizing a workshop on developing communication skills, challenges, and strategies during 22nd, 23rd, 29th, and 30th of April 2022 for all the distance students. DD is organizing this workshop second time for the benefit of all the distance students. Therefore, I request all the students to make use of this workshop. First of all, I would like to introduce Honorable Vice Chancellor to all the students. Professor Gurmeet Singh Ji, who is a renowned academician, administrator, is an internationally reputed expert in the field of corrosion science and smart materials. After taking over as the Vice Chancellor of Pondicherry University, he has made a big change in the university in terms of research projects, infrastructure, recruitment, and recent COVID pandemic management on the campus. Professor Singh began actually his academic career as a lecturer in the Department of Chemistry. So during this 2011 and 12, Professor Singh served actually as a chairperson, professor as Lunghwa University, Taipei, where he was specially invited invited to start the collaborative research. He was visiting scientist to Hungary, Japan, and has been academic assignments in Germany, Italy, Australia, Singapore, many other countries. And he also currently visiting professor to Japan Advanced Institute of Science and Technology, Ishikawa, Japan, and an inspiring teacher and mentor of research. Professor Singh has actually 14 MPhils, has guided 14 MPhils, 50 PhD scholars. At the time of moving to Pondicherry University, Professor Singh was personally supervising 9 major R&D projects worth about 7.5 crores. With about 150 research papers, of which majority are in high-impact international journals, Professor Singh is also among the most cited scientists in his field. An oft-decorated academician, Professor Singh has received, among other honors like Meritorious Contribution Award, Annapurna Award, membership of Royal Society of Chemistry London, fellowship of Society of Advanced and Electrochemical Society Technology, and the Electrochemical Society of India. Over and above, he is an excellent and kind-hearted human being with big helping hand to all on the campus. Now I request the Honorable Vice Chancellor to inaugurate the workshop and give his inaugural address.
Thank you, Professor Ramaya, for very kind words about me. I am delighted to be here to inaugurate this workshop, which in my own opinion is a very important one, because you would have seen all over that people do their degrees. They do their degrees in English language also at times I have seen. They will be doing BA Honours and then MA English. And when it comes to writing, couple of things when we tell them, one gets a very depressed feeling when you look at the writings that these people do. The reason is that, in my own opinion, that they have never developed a habit of reading and listening. They would listen to the radio, they will listen probably to some channels on television, and they will, whenever a teacher advises them that you read these books or read certain stanzas or listen to some news items on television, they would never pay due attention to this. And the result of that is that even those who have done post-graduation in certain languages, I'm not talking about any particular language in general, in particular, but what we have seen is that even after doing master's degree, when it comes to communication skill, they are left wanting. When it comes to writing, they are not able to do justice to this. Speaking that language, of course, one does pick it up, but then that also is not to the required standard. So somewhere down the line, we need to guide these students, guide our students who are doing higher degrees, and give them some kind of an advice that one of the best acumen you can develop in order to advance into your career is a habit of reading and listening. If you listen to some particular news item or on any commentary on any topic, once you listen, you will be able to grasp some of the ideas and you will be able to pick up where do they give the punctuation, what kind of pronunciation is done, what way we give pause. So once you learn about these nitty-gritties of the language, one tends to start doing better. And with these 4 skills, which is listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Writing obviously comes in once you get more confidence in your speaking as well as communication. Communication is a big problem these days because students are not able to communicate, and since they don't communicate, they hesitate in clarifying their doubts in the class or elsewhere. So they are not able to put across their doubts, with the result that whatever difficulties or problems they have in their subject, they continue to linger on with them and they are not able to overcome these difficulties. So I am very glad, very delighted that our DD has organized this very important workshop on, and a 4-day workshop, let me tell you, not 1 day, 2 days, 4 days workshop on developing communication skills, and they are going to deliberate on challenges and strategies. I'm sure when some of the experts would give talks, and the point that which I've been highlighting, that listening is a great acumen which you need to develop. If you start listening very properly, you will find that you will get a good grasp of that, and then gradually your communication skill automatically would improve, because when you listen to somebody speaking very properly, you also try to to follow that kind of a style, and you become a better communicator as compared to what you were earlier. So once listening habit develops, your communication skill obviously will become better, and the communication skill becoming better means you will be much better in speaking. And once that develops, you will develop the art of writing also. So these are four qualities which will be inculcated in you if you attend to this workshop rather seriously. And I am of the opinion that if somebody has to do very well in one's career, these four qualities have got to be there. And if somebody doesn't have this, that doesn't mean one cannot develop it. One can always do this, and that can be done by attending to these quality workshops and then adopting these strategies that you are going to be advised about. So I wish the workshop a grand success and give my compliments to DD, the entire staff, for taking the time out to organize such a useful, wonderful workshop. Thank you very much, and God bless all of you. Please enjoy yourself in this.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you for inaugurating the workshop and giving it your valuable remarks. And definitely, the remarks what you made, we'll try to implement the forthcoming the session. And thank you very much for the Department of English collaborating us, actually organizing this. And now I would like to actually request Dr. Binu Zukaria to give an overview of the workshop and actually introduce the resource persons.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Gurmeet Singh, esteemed Director, Directorate of Distance Education, Professor C.K. Ramaya, respected Dean, School of Humanities, and Program Coordinator, Professor Clement S. Lutz, my good friend and the head of the Department of English, Professor T. Marks, the Joint Coordinator, Lieutenant Commander Rajkumar, our resource person for this session, Dr. V.K. Karthika, faculty members, officers, staff, students, and friends. I welcome all of you to this 4-day e-workshop on developing communication skills, challenges, and strategies. When Professor Ramaya and Professor Clement planned on having a workshop of this kind and asked me to organize it, we had several topics related to English language studies. It was Professor Ramaya who felt that our focus should be on communication skills, and it is undoubtedly an area that requires our undivided attention. In educational institutions, often the only time we talk about communication skills as an important aspect is with reference to placements and career progression. But humans are social beings, and we are aware that communicating is something that we do every single day of our lives. Yet we tend to neglect the relevance of communication skills and forget the impact that good communication skills can create anywhere, be it at home, in the classroom, or at the workplace. It is important to communicate effectively in any language, but we focus on English here as usually it is the language that is formally used in the workplace. As we concentrate on communication skills, this e-workshop looks at the 4 basic language skills: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Proficiency in these skills is paramount to an individual good communication skills. The aim should be to become proactive listeners, impactful speakers, analytical readers, and proficient writers. However, as non-native users of the English language, this might appear to be difficult. As students, teachers, employees, employers, many of us may come across challenging situations with regard to communicating in English. The earlier mentioned aim of becoming efficient and effective listeners, speakers, readers, and writers may be tough, but nevertheless, it is not impossible. This e-workshop on developing communication skills is a small step in attempting to convert that impossible into a very distinct possibility. During the course of this workshop over the next 2 weekends, starting from today, we will be joined by distinguished resource persons from across the country. They have all very graciously accepted our invitation to be a part of this training program. The e-workshop has been designed in such a manner that on each day of the workshop, we will have 2 sessions that will be handled by 2 resource persons who will be talking about one specific skill and certain key aspects related to that skill. In this manner, we will be touching upon all the 4 skills. We also have some time after each session for participants to interact with the resource persons. At the end of the workshop, we hope that you would have learned some tips and strategies that you would find helpful in improving your English language skills. But at this point, before I end, I would also like to tell you that your proficiency in any language also very much depends on your use of that particular language. So the more you use, the more proficient you become. I'm grateful to our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Gurmeet Singh, for his continuous support and encouragement in all our endeavors, to Professor C.K. Ramaya, the Director of DD and the Program Coordinator, Professor Clement S. Lutz, Dean, School of Humanities, for giving me this opportunity to organize this e-workshop, and also to the Head of the Department of English for supporting me, Professor T. Marks, and to Lieutenant Commander Raj Kumar and all the other staff of DD for taking care of all the technical and administrative matters related to this workshop. Let me now take this opportunity to introduce our resource person for the first session, Dr. V.K. Karthika, who is currently an Assistant Professor of English in the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences at NIT Trichy. It is indeed a very proud moment for me to introduce her, because she is, a student of the first batch that I taught here, and she is a gold medalist in MA English from Pondicherry University. And after that, she had, she had got the Tetley and Lupton Scholarship and did her master's in TESOL studies from the University of Leeds in England. And she worked there for quite some time, 3-4 years, and both as a teacher and as a student. That was helpful for her, as she says. It helped her to gain a lot of insight into the challenges that language learners faced, and also the potential remedies that could resolve these challenges. And that helped her in understanding a multicultural, a multilingual, and a multi-ethnic kind of learning and teaching scenario, which she also, as she came back to India. She did her PhD in English. Her teaching philosophy is deeply rooted in her belief that education must be an agent of transformation by enabling the stakeholders to activate social and emotional learning, and thus going on to build a better humanity. She offers lecture sessions on aviation English of the Airport Authority of India, translation, critical discourse, public speaking skills, continuing professional development, teaching and learning strategies for the teachers. Her interests are varied. It continues to the English medium instruction, cultural studies, translation studies, and so on. So I'm really happy to introduce Dr. V.K. Karthika to all of you. And now I invite her to handle the session. We have taken a bit of her time, but I hope she'll be able to handle the session very well. Over to you, Karthika.
Thank you very much, sir, for that very cordial introduction. And I'm indeed grateful to Pondicherry Central University for having me over here. My respect to the Honorable Vice Chancellor, the Director of Distance Education, Head of the Department of English, and all the colleagues and staff members of English Department as well as the Distance Education Department. Thank you very much for having me over here. And Clement sir, I thank you as well. It is so lovely to see you after so long. Thank you very much, Binu sir. I'll now begin. I think I'll share my screen. Yeah, I hope it's visible and full screen.
Yes, ma'am, it's visible, ma'am.
Thank you very much. So I planned it as an interactive session, but seeing the number of participants here, which is really like huge, I think I'll have to resort onto the lecture mode, saving time as well. So I have planned to talk about very brief introductory kind of input on reading, especially in the business context. But I'll not be just focusing on business related matters in general. How do we improve our listening ability? That will be my topic of discussion today. So this is the overview of the session. I'll begin with some input about communication and reading, then reading critically. We'll quickly look at Bloom's taxonomy, not from a teacher's perspective, from a learner's perspective actually, and then relate it with critical reading. And I'll talk about what is Socratic seminar, which is actually a discussion, but how is that useful in the context of developing our reading ability? I'll place it in context. And finally, reading and the other two productive skills, which are speaking and writing. Okay, so I will begin now. I wanted to ask you this question and get some comments in the chat box, but I'm not very sure how it is going to work. Why do we read? At least you can ask that question to yourself and get some answers in your mind. If you put it in the chat box, that's great. But just think about it. Why do we actually read? To gather information, to learn, or to have an in-depth knowledge in something? I cannot see the chat box right now, but I know that somebody has put in something in the chat box. I'm sure that whatever you think about will fall into these 3 categories or 4 categories that I'm going to show. So to be entertained. So for information, to know more about something, to have in-depth knowledge in something, and for entertainment purpose, we read generally. Now, we talked about why do we read, okay? Now, what do we actually read? We'll start with newspaper, magazines, books, notices. In that category, there are quite a few. Letters, emails, blogs. Now we are coming to the reality. These days, what do we read most? Actually, we read the social media posts quite a lot. Okay, I cannot sum up everything right there because we have those many social media platforms over which we function every single day. And many of us actually read something first on our phone as soon as we get up. So reading is very important. It's an integral part of our life. Whether you are into academics or not, it's quite there in our lives, quite integral to our life, everyday activities. Okay. Now, the next question is, how do we read? You might be thinking that I'm a lady with lots of questions. Yes, I do ask a lot of questions to myself as well. So how do we read? Okay. Now, I have something for you. I wanted some responses actually. Don't believe everything you read on the internet, says Abraham Lincoln. Okay. You look at the picture, you look at what is written there. Now I have a question. What have you understood? Can somebody put your response in the chat box, or maybe unmute and speak to me? Unmuting and speaking might be helpful because I just see the slide. I don't see the main page.
I think there was no internet during Abraham Lincoln time.
Right. Thank you very much, whoever said that. So you understand that these are not Lincoln's words. Probably these are not probably, these are not Lincoln's words. You understand. Why do you say that? Can the same person, I don't know who you are, but may I have the response for this, please? Why do you think that these are not Lincoln's words? I think you have answered that because there was no internet during that time. How have you come to this conclusion that there was no internet during that time? Simple. You knew about it. You knew that they both, I mean, internet and Abraham Lincoln, they belong to 2 different time span, and you had some prior knowledge about the time period in which internet came into existence and when Abraham Lincoln lived. But beyond that, there is something else as well that is actually not quite visible when you read it, or not quite palpable to yourself or to your own, you in the sense to all of us, okay? That we don't really think about. We just read the meme and then understood that it's not Lincoln's words. These are not Lincoln's words, and there was no internet during that time. We justified it. But to reinforce that justification, there was something else as well. We knew that it was a meme. That word itself, meme, carried some load. So when you say something, that has an impact. So you read that, I have put it there as read the meme. So it is a meme. What is the purpose of a meme? We knew that there was an inherent joke, or there was some kind of a sarcasm. Something is intended there which makes it different from a notice. So there is a difference between notice and a meme, and we knew that. So it's not just your guess. You have that prior knowledge. But along with that, there were some contextual cues to it, which, you know, might have been processed so quickly that we could not monitor. It's not because of slow processing, but we thought about it so quickly, and we think, what is there to talk about it? We knew it all the way around, like that. So this is so simple. When we read memes on phone or you know, on different social media platforms, it's quite simple. We get it. We get the joke. But there are certain ones where we stop, pause, and think about it a few times, and then get the meaning. So even a small meme like this carries a lot of semantic load, a lot of meaning in that. And what we need is a little more to go beyond, or go beyond a little more from that surface level kind of reading. If you were a reader who just reads that, don't believe everything you read on the internet. Look at Abraham Lincoln's picture and look at the, you know, the name that is written there, and then proceed with that. You just say that, don't believe everything you read on the internet. Correct. What is there to talk about? But as you have this critical thinking faculty, you made use of that contextual clue that it's a meme. There is a picture of Lincoln dressed up in a particular way. A lot of things came there in context. And you came to this. I'm not going to talk about the cognitive aspect of it, working memory, processing and all. I'm not going to talk about it. Let us take it very simple. There are lots of contextual clues which help us to read better. And what you need to do is, or what we need to rather do is, to just look for them, analyze them, and find out patterns, or maybe actively get involved in that kind of reading. This might sound a little theoretical. We'll come to the practical mode very quickly. So reading critically was what I was saying, and I started with talking about activation of schema, or your background knowledge. You have some knowledge in something, and you use that when you read something new. When you don't know the meaning of a particular word, you read it in context. Okay, what could be? A lot of prediction. I think the next speaker would be talking to you about the strategy. So I'm not touching upon that. I'm just telling you a little bit about critical reading skills. And then there are some textual clues. So here we had some visual cues and textual cue as well, because I told you that it's a meme. All these will have some impact in the way we process our way of thinking, or the way we process our thoughts, and then finally make some assumptions about it. Analyzing the available text further, okay, you work on the textual cues, you analyze the text that is available. Maybe it is just a picture, maybe it's just a few, you know, emojis also. When you talk about it these days, reading emojis are also really a big thing, and there is a novel that is written completely using emojis. Formulating assumptions. So through this analysis, we frame certain kind of thinking. Okay, the meaning could be this, or the author might have intended to say this. We make some assumptions, and then we go for the deep reading. See, these are all steps through which we all go when we read certain things. Okay, so some of us can actually very quickly read and then understand. There are very quick readers who can simply like skim through it. That means just quickly glance through it and get the points quite easily. Some of us have to take some effort and then read, reread, and then ask for help sometimes. All these are part of the game, okay? So deep reading means you go deep into the text, try to understand it, and then come out with the meaning. Sometimes, you know, our interpretations are so vast and wild that the author might not have intended it actually. Then my point is about this questioning bit, okay? Questioning the assumptions that we form. We formulate assumptions generally when we read, when we write, when we talk to people. We formulate assumptions about it, about the context, okay? So when I come for this program, I have some assumptions about this program. I have some assumptions about who the participants would be. So that's quite common. And questioning that assumption is very important when it comes to reading. Otherwise, you will just get subscribed to something that is actually written in the text and only that. So you won't move to the next level, which is quite necessary, as the Honorable Vice Chancellor mentioned in the beginning. That skill which is making you a complete human being, or which is actually helping you to be a perfect professional, or to do the task that you are supposed to do, or practically live quite effectively in the society. That stems from questioning of certain assumptions. Okay, now you look at this. You shouldn't think that I'm just working only with memes. When you are laughing at WW3 memes and start to wonder why the sun is coming out at 9 p.m. I use this in my class, okay, with my postgraduate students, as well as with some of the postgraduate students, as well as with the BTech students. I use this meme in my class, and I ask them, what do you understand from this? Quite a few people surprised me by, you know, they were able to tell me the meaning of this meme. But there were quite a few people who were not able to understand what is even WW3 and what is the sun coming out at 9 p.m. If I had time, I would have stopped and asked you people to give your comments on this, okay? But at least one person, can you tell me what could be this about? Looking at the picture.
Ma'am, it's a World War III, and the light is for the atomic blast.
Okay, how do you get that meaning?
Actually, ma'am, my sense of humor is extraordinary.
You think your sense of humor is extraordinary. Very nice.
Yes,
yeah. So I think you have a very critical mind, and you have quite a lot of background information. You knew that there was some crisis happening in the world, which is to be called as WW3. You knew that there were war memes being created and circulated all over the globe, and people laugh at it. People think that they are in comfort zones. This doesn't happen to me, and comfortably laugh at it. And also you knew what has happened in Hiroshima or Nagasaki back in 1945. And
yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
I read a lot of history.
Honestly. So all these background information actually get you to quickly think about it. I had students who said that he watched the meme all the way, and then all through the night, that he didn't realize that it was morning or it was night. Then the student realized that there was some problem in what he was saying. So he read it again but couldn't get through because of the lack of schema or the background knowledge. So there are quite a few things that are required for you to read quite quickly. And in your business communication scenario, reading quickly is very, very important. You cannot spend all the time like an academic going back to the paper, reading it and correcting it or understanding it or analyzing multiple layers of meaning. You have to be really, really quick about it. Read Shiv Khera's work. You know, hilariously, he talks about in the book, You Can Win. I keep on quoting that bit whenever I go and meet management students. So you should really read that. It's very interesting, actually. How he talks about the language capabilities of professionals, and then how they tackle problems, and how critical thinking ability is quite important in them tackling their language issues. So it is in that paradigm that I'm going to talk to you today about reading. So there is something called Bloom's taxonomy, which we teachers usually use. Okay, today I'm going to introduce that to you. Some of you might know it already. If you do a bit of research on things, or if you are interested in education, you might have come across this. This is the old taxonomy, not the new one. So I picked this up because this fits this context. Okay, there are 6 steps. These are not distinct steps. You cannot say that in evaluation all the other things are absent, or in analysis there is no comprehension or no knowledge, it's just analysis. No, it's just like a step-by-step process that they show, but then at the higher level, every lower level is also embedded. We need to understand that. So it's about, you read some text, you get some knowledge, you comprehend it, you try to apply it, you try to analyze it, you synthesize all the information that you get, and then you evaluate. Okay, so this is how knowledge is being constructed, or learning is happening, is what Bloom says, the Bloomsbury group. So now I'm just going to place it in the context. There are some things which actually tells us that it's quite an easy kind of a passage to read, or a paragraph to read, and you completely understand what it is. So it could be something like, where you read a passage on Indian independence, and I ask you a question, when did India win independence? And you can simply check for that particular year, and then you will see quite a few years there, and then you know, if you don't already know, I'm not surprised if people don't know when did India win independence. I have had many shocks like that. So you check it and you find it out, and then that's an easy catch. So these are all literal kind of very lower level kind of questions that check your knowledge. Who led the Quit India movement, or who is the current Prime Minister of India? Anything that is quite literal, quite easily palpable kind of knowledge, that you can see that who, what, when, where, how. These are all at the knowledge base. Very easy to comprehend, and it's not challenging any readers. And when you read an article, or when you read your textbook, to find these questions is very easy. And when you have your exams, you really look forward to these type of questions, so that you can score almost full marks. But when we set question papers, we have to actually put all different steps in place, and then get questions from all these steps and put. And that is why you cannot ever get that complete score that you would aspire to get. Comprehension level is slightly challenging, but again, it's again at the lower level bit. It demands a little bit of your effort rather than what you get from the text. So in the reading text, somebody said something, but at least you have to tell it in your own words. You cannot just copy and paste it there. Okay, or they'll say, what is the main idea of this paragraph, or what is the main idea that is being conveyed by this article? So you need to just get engaged with that text, and then a bit of challenge you have, and you process it and you say that. So knowledge and comprehension questions, knowledge level and comprehension level questions are quite easy for you to get, and it's easy for you to ask. I'm not talking about the exam pattern. I'm talking about you asking that question when you read a text. When I read something, I do ask a lot of questions. Why, what, where, so many questions. This what, where, and other things, it's quite easy for us to find. How is slightly difficult, because sometimes, the information might be scattered here and there. So you have the cognitive challenge of assembling it together, synthesizing them together. So it might be slightly challenging, but the why question could be really difficult. Okay. Then from literal level, we will move to inferential level, which is higher order thinking skills. If you have heard of National Education Policy 2020, the policy document stresses on the development of higher order thinking skills. Okay, so it's pretty challenging that we have to actually change our practices of learning itself, where we can actually make use of all the opportunities that we get to exercise with our higher order thinking skills. It's very important. So many students actually, not because NEP suggested that, but whenever they get an opportunity, they like experimenting with that. So I'm just giving you some tips to just go ahead with your thinking ability a little higher than the application level, or maybe the not application level, the knowledge level or the comprehension level, a little challenging way you go forward, and then read the text and see if you can relate certain information. So there are certain questions that I've put in there. How is something an example of something else? How is something related to something else? Why is something significant? These are the questions that will actually promote your critical thinking ability. You will go a step ahead from simply comprehending something or understanding something. And then you can analyze. Okay, so analyze means analysis means it is like you get the whole and then you put it into components and or different parts and you look at it. Fine. So what are the parts or features of this thing, or how does this get compared or contrasted with something else? What evidence can you bring in? So for all that, you need to have your thinking skills working along with your reading skills. So there is where your reading and thinking becomes one. Okay, and then you have the synthesis bit. What would you predict or infer from this? Okay, how would you create or design a new something? What might happen if you combine this with something? So a lot of predictions are happening, and that is where this inferential thing comes in. You infer from the text. These are all strategies for reading, which will be dealt in the next session, I'm sure. So what solutions would you suggest for something? So basically, when you are interacting with a text or when you're reading a text, you're asking all these questions to yourself, so that you have clarity in making sense of the text in a better way. Okay, and then if you come to the evaluative level, which is really a higher order thinking level again, you have to evaluate what you have found. And that is what I said, questioning your own assumptions. The assumptions that you have come up with, you need to test them. You need to challenge them. Is it the most suitable way? What is the most important aspect of it? How would you decide about something? What criteria would you use to assess this? So take your textbook, or maybe take an article that is in your own field and ask these questions. I'm sure that if you have a list of these questions, you will make sense of that text quite effectively. And reading is very important because we gather a lot of knowledge from reading. We cannot say that with YouTube coming and so many other platforms where videos and documentaries and all are available, and reading is dying. We cannot say that, because we read every single day. As I said, we read. What we read, that is something that we can decide upon. But reading doesn't die. We do read every day, and that can actually help you to people say that people in the field of management say that reading is a stress buster actually, and reading novels or reading pleasure reading for that matter provides a lot of happiness and internal peace, which is actually why we what we live for, right? We just don't live for food and other basic comforts. We also live for some internal peace, experiencing some calmness, and also reading is quite important in that social emotional sense as well. So the point is that what I wanted to discuss with this slide is that when you actually ask these level questions, these types of questions, especially at the inferential and evaluative level, your comprehension ability will naturally increase, and you will become a little better speaker and a writer than how you were before, because you will have a lot of things to tell the world, because you are getting engaged in a discussion with yourself there. And that is where I'm going to take you to the next bit, which is Socratic seminar. Everybody knows Socrates, I believe. Socrates was a great teacher. When we talk about great teachers, we talk about this person as well. And whenever his disciples go to ask him questions, he gives a question back. And then the students go back and find the answers, and answering that question will resolve their previous question. So he doesn't give ready-made answers. So there was nothing like encapsulated or capsule kind of answer. I can hear some cross talk. Could you please turn off your mic, whoever is speaking? Yeah. Okay. So we will move ahead. Socratic seminar is actually a speaking bit. It's not a reading one. It's actually a speaking discourse where close textual analysis happens. That means you read it very carefully. You read the text very carefully. And then it's a collaborative reading that comes in, because you're not reading alone, you're reading with others. See, this is very difficult for us, right? Reading alone itself is very difficult. You can't concentrate. How do you read? But there are beautiful, opportunities that you get when you read in a group. I remember we used to do that when I was in Pondicherry University. We used to have our British fiction being read in groups quite a few times in hostels. So critical questioning is very important as well. So it doesn't stop. You see, you just sit in a group and you read randomly. No, there is some way in which you can read collaboratively. It's not that I will read the first 3 sentences and you read the next 3 sentences. It doesn't make sense. You read it in sense units. Okay, even when we speak, there are sense groups and post groups. If we don't have that, we don't make any sense. Similarly, when you read also, there has to be some sense grouping that is happening. You cannot just randomly stop at one particular place and then go ahead and ask somebody else to read it. It may not make that perfect connection. So we need to read it in sense groups. So when one particular idea gets over, you can stop there, the other person can step in, or maybe you can have a group reading and then have a discussion based on that. From there you will ask multiple questions like critical questioning, and then the discussion again happens. Okay, so through questions you will generate further more discussions, rather than just saying that, okay, I will read this bit, you will read that bit, and then we will conclude. No, based on what you read, there'll be a lot of questions that is being asked. It will be just like a round table discussion that we can have. Or, you just think about sitting in your canteen and then have a chat about something. Similarly, we read a text very seriously, and by collaborative reading, what happens is that we get multiple perspectives on the same matter. So somebody might say that it's quite easy. A plus b the whole square is equal to a square plus 2ab plus b square. Perfect. I know that. But then there might be somebody, why do we learn this? Why do we need this? So there could be some question that is coming from there. And somebody might be saying that, yeah, this is the purpose of using it. And somebody says, otherwise also we can solve that problem. Why should we need that particular equation itself? We can just, and what is the significance of that when we have all these gadgets? You look at it, there are multiple perspectives emerging from one single sentence that is being read out, just because there are many brains involved in that, or many different people who are with different capabilities of thinking are involved in the loop. Okay, now let's just pinpoint it to the self, where I'm telling about introspective reading as a Socratic seminar. So here, don't think that I'm telling you to just sit at one place and then read it out on your own, and so that people can think that you are a lunatic. No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that it's a very close kind of activity where you get engaged in that reading and you talk to yourself. Talk in the sense, I'm not saying that you sub-vocalize things. Don't do that. Don't speak it out as well. Just have that internal conversation with all the questions that I have shown you in the Bloom's taxonomy. Just critically engage in that reading activity. Generate assumptions on your own. You don't get multiple perspectives because it's an individual act. Okay, so at least generate your own assumptions about what you are reading. Question that assumption. Again, I'm taking you back to that initial part, and critically evaluate about your assumptions. Is it right? Could there be a different perspective to it? And is it all? This is the best way in which this problem could be solved. You can think about it, right? And then reformulating assumptions. If you find that there is another way of doing it, you have to just reconstruct what you have already constructed. You need to rework on that and modify that. Fine. Now there are 6 types of questions that can actually help you to read better, okay, or even speak better. When you are engaging in a discussion, you can use all these questions to assist you to speak better. And when you are reading it all alone, you can use them to get a better perspective, to get a better idea, to comprehend the text better. So there are 6 types, including clarification, questions that are aimed towards clarification, assumptions, reasons and evidence, viewpoints or perspectives, implications and consequences, and questioning the question itself, which is very challenging. Okay, so let's look at the first one. These are all higher level ones. These are all not, very basic ones, not literal ones. Why do you say that? What do you mean by something? How does this relate to our text or our knowledge or my knowledge? You ask that question. That will generate certain kind of things, or certain kind of ideas that are not quite there in the text. It may not be right there in the text. You will generate it. You need clarification. So you seek it on your own. And if you are in a conversation, you seek it from others. That is perfectly okay. But as I said, if you are doing the reading as a close individual activity, an introspective kind of mode you are in, these questions can actually generate a lot of thoughts in your mind that can actually enrich your thinking process itself. The more we do something, the better we become in that, right? So what could we assume instead of something? How can you verify or disapprove that assumption? On what basis do you think in this way? It's quite interesting to ask that question to yourself. Even if, take it like this. You're doing something for your family, or you're doing something not quite academically or professionally, but in a very personal thing, it's quite a personal matter. Ask this question. You will be able to think about it in a better way, and you will be able to generate a better result out of it. How could we assume something else? How can we, you verify or disapprove the thing that I have in my mind? On what basis do we think about this in this way? What would be an example of this? If you want reasons and evidence, what is this analogous to? What do you think causes to happen this? Why? Lots of why questions will come now. What would be an alternate plan for this? What is another way to look at it? Why is this the best? What are the strengths and weaknesses of something? How are this and those similar? What is a counter argument for this one? Now, probing implications and consequences. What generalizations can you make? So this is something that is actually breaking the stereotypical things that we have in our minds or in our society. We consume a lot of stereotypes, actually. Quite a few stereotypes exist in our society. And when you start asking these questions, you are actually moving a step ahead, breaking them and walking a little more closer to what NEP 2020 called as global citizenship. So it's not the teacher's duty all the time to handhold you and direct you to that path. At this level of doing master's degree and all, by now you have to have that self-regulation in learning, where you find your own strategies, you find your own styles of learning to excel in what you do. Okay, there are shortcuts, right? We talk about hard work and smart work, especially engineering students. You people talk about it quite a lot. I know that. I have my MBA students, quite switched on ones, who used to ask me lots of questions. So I know that. Having said that, how far do you use that critical thinking ability to walk that extra mile? That is something that I would like you people to think about when we talk about implications and consequences, because I would like you to think about the implications and consequences of asking these questions while you read something, or while you hear something, or while you think that you can subscribe to that point of view. Before you do that, it's important to probe certain assumptions. It's important to probe certain perspectives that are coming up. Make judgments whether that is a valid point or not. Is it just an opinion or an argument? You need to get engaged with your higher order thinking skills quite a bit at this level of studies. I'm not scaring you, but I'm telling you that as Professor Binu Zakaria said in the beginning, you need to have that responsibility. The learners have to take charge of your own learning, and no teacher can actually tell you that go this way and you will succeed. No, you have to make that path on your own with whatever input that you gather from the classrooms or from the textbooks or from the other books or from your world knowledge. So questioning is very important. You can question about, about this as well. Question about the question now. What was the point of this question? Why do you ask this question? And what does it mean? How does it apply to everyday life? These are very pertinent ones, actually, very important ones. Higher level ones, and very difficult to figure out the answers sometimes, and that is where we go and discuss with people. It's just like, you have this concept of design thinking, right? Some of you might be familiar with design thinking. So you have a problem and you would like to find a solution for that, and on the way to find that particular solution, you will have so many impediments, you will have so many questions coming up. So there is scarcity of water in Kalapet, and imagine, okay, in that case, how are you going to install a project there which can actually provide water to the people who do not have, who have the scarcity of water? When you have a project in your mind, there are quite a few things that you need to think about. What is the cost involved? What are the technological support systems that you would like to have to implement this project plan? Quite a few things that will come around, and it's through thinking, it's through cross questioning that we are actually generating certain responses to it and generate a prototype, and finally evaluate that prototype and make the actual solution. So this is the design thinking process. I'm sure that you might be familiar with that. It's a booming concept in India now. Now, this type of questioning is very pertinent even in our personal life, professional life, academic life. And when you read a text, asking these questions can actually put things in perspective. You can generate multiple levels of meaning, and you will get quite a lot of ideas about things that you would like to know, and in a little different light, because you are asking a lot of questions to the text and there is nobody in the text to give you an answer. Okay, the author is not there. You are just reading what he or she has written. So the letters are there and you are conversing or you are talking to the letters. So now let's just look at this question and answer relationship. When you read, there are two types of relationship. Okay, in the book you can find the answer for all the questions that we have discussed. In your head you will find some answers. Okay, so when you think about it, in the book you have two types right there in the book: think and search. You remember I told you about scattered pieces of information. When we get a question like how is something, or how did something happen? So one thing might be there in the first paragraph, second thing might be in the third paragraph. You need to just synthesize them. Okay, so but the answer is there in the book. You can actually read the book or read the text and understand that it's there. So right there is very easy. That's the most literal level one. As I told you, when did India win independence, or when did Second World War end? You know that particular time period or date, or who was ruling Germany at that time. You know all that bits. Okay. So now you reread by scanning, which will be detailed in the next session. Look for keywords, and that's how you just go about grabbing this in the book right there type of answers. Okay, when you are actually thinking and searching, you need to actually skim through it. You won't know what exactly you should look for. You will have to just go through it maybe 1 or 2 times, skim through it, reread, look for all the important information, align them together or assemble them together so that you will get the answer to the question. Just like how did this resulted in something else? So it could be there in different paragraphs. You have to just pick up the right ones from wherever, align them together or assemble them together so that you get the answer. In my head, very challenging. You have two types again, author and you. So you have the text written there. The author has said something and you are reading it. Perfect. Answer is not there in the text. Very easy, right? The answer does not feature in the text at all. Think about how what you know and how what's in the text fit together. Okay, you know certain things, just like how I asked you about what is the meaning of this meme when we had the WW3 meme, and one person was quite able to, I mean, I'm sure that many of you knew it, but then somebody was able to say it loud and clear that, these are the reasons why I could think about it to get the right. So you have combined WW3, you have combined sun coming out, you have combined your previous knowledge of Second World War, you have combined your knowledge about the little boy and fat man, not people, the atomic bombs. So you had all that in your mind, which actually made you to find that answer quite quickly. So you had an interaction with the meme. That is also a reading text with limited bit of reading. You looked at it, you found it, and you predicted, this could be the case. You predicted it. So it's always with the background knowledge that you actually get involved in the new text, with the new text, and generate new meanings. On my own, you don't have any control over it to a great extent, or the author doesn't have any control about it. That's why I said sometimes, your interpretation might be something and the author might have intended something else. So think about what you already know and think about what you have read before. Try to make connections, and this will be largely your own brainchild. This will be largely your own interpretations, which could be different from what the author meant. But these type of higher level engagement with the text, where you can actually find question-answer relationship within the text, is quite important for you as a learner and me as a teacher. Okay, I know about the time. I'll stick to that. Now, when we talk about reading and writing, I would like to just invite your attention to something called authorial intention. Why do people write? Okay, they'll have their point of view to express. There will be a purpose of writing. There'll be intended audience for them to write for. Tone is also very important. With certain tone, the writers write, and it's all the reader's responsibility to decode all these things. You need to understand the author's stance. Think about the newspapers. I don't want to make any political statements, but think about the newspapers that we read or the news channels that we watch. Some of them have clear political stance on certain issues. So if we don't know them, we will believe that that is absolute truth. So there is something between absolute truth and what is quite visible. So what is visible may not be the truth. So to understand what is the inherent truth, you need to really understand the point of view of the author. What is the author's stance? Okay, and then what is the author's purpose? Is it to inform or explain or instruct something, or is it to entertain me, or is it to persuade me? Once you understand that this author actually wants to persuade through these things, then your stance on that particular reading text will be different. Be it your management articles, be it your, it's a very good example that, you have these case studies. Okay, I didn't bring in any case studies, knowing that quite a few people will be there, and it won't be a proper interactive kind of session. Otherwise, I usually bring in a lot of case studies from management text, especially from Shiv Khera. Very interesting, hilarious ones you will get there. So how a customer resolves a problem, or how somebody actually troubleshoots an issue that is between the client and the company. So very interesting ones, and how the persuasion and negotiation work there. Once you get to know about it, it's very easy. Sometimes, you know, even in your real life, someone says and someone comes and praises you, you completely understand that this is quite not normal, and you ask, tell me, what's the matter? Same way, when we read the text, we understand what the author's purpose, and then that will help us formulate our own point of view and ask those questions that I have already discussed with you in a more effective manner. Okay, and sometimes the audience also, you know, knowing about what could be the intended audience may not be MA students or MSc students or MBA students. Maybe this is for the faculty members, or maybe this is for the researchers, or maybe for the managers. You can think about it. Knowing that also can actually help you to get your reading comprehension in place. Tone is also important. You need to understand the tone of the article or the tone of the client. If the client writes an email to you, you need to really understand the tone of the mail. Sometimes, you know, it looks quite plain and simple, but there could be heavy sarcasm intended, especially when they are very much dissatisfied kind of customers. I write to different online agencies for, you know, giving substandard items and all very subtly, so that saying things without saying is a trick that people play. So if you are into the company executive's position, you are supposed to decode all that dissatisfaction that the customer voices subtly, even if it's very subtle or very shallow. I mean, not shallow, very, very much hidden. Now, let's look at the authority stance. Reading and writing. I will quite quickly conclude it now. Look at the word. So how do we find all these stances? These are all from, so let me just take you back to the reading and writing once again. See here, how do you identify this? These are all through the words, because the writer is not there for you to have a discussion with him or her. So you decode everything from the words, from the vocabulary, from the way that it is constructed. So someone talks about you know, some crimes and punishment, and someone says that I think he should be given capital punishment or she should be given capital punishment, and then immediately I understand that this person has a very positive outlook about death sentence. If it is me, I would say death sentence, because I don't subscribe to that idea of giving death penalty. So from the different words that they speak or that they write, we can actually decode the authorial intention. So here I'm giving you some examples with the verbs. Look at this. Chen argues that. So argues means it's a very strong kind of point. And when I write that Chen argues that, I'm very sure that Chen is very much clear about what he is saying. Okay, so it's a very strong argument that is raised by Chen, and I'm very sure about that strength of his argument. And then Chen suggests that, indicate, so suggests that actually is quite indicating. So it indicates. It is not quite confirming to something. It just indicates. The writer is not very sure. Okay, so when I write this, Chen suggests that, I'm not very sure whether Chen actually subscribed to that view, or he actually thought about it very concretely about it, or that is his single sole opinion. I don't say that, or maybe for or against, I'm not very sure when I write that. Chen indicates that. Again, indicates is again a neutral kind of verb, which doesn't say that it's to that side or this side. So these are the reporting verbs that you need to really like look for when you are reading. So when you see the word argue or deny, you know that it's very clear kind of a stance the author is taking. Or assume, demonstrate, example. These are all like, all these words fall into different categories of that Bloom's taxonomy that I have shown you. So when you know that, see, somebody says so-and-so reports the results of this or reports that this is what happened. So it is just that I'm not involved in that. I'm just saying that X has reported this. Whether that person has expressed the right opinion, wrong opinion, truth or false, I have no idea. That person did this. So I'm taking a very neutral stance there. Okay, and I say that the person speculates. So could be to a great extent, yes, I agree to what he says, or I understand that it's a very strong statement, but I'm not very sure about it. So these are the words that will actually help you to read better, to understand the authorial intention. So when I say that you must do something, and when I say that you may do something, you understand that these are two different things. You must do indicates mandatory nature, whereas you may is like you still have an option there. Similarly, these words are very important when you are actually doing your academics, when you are studying, and when you have to read or write your articles, journal articles and all. It's very important. Now, questions for critical reading. I'll be quick. 10 questions I'll give you. These are the questions that you need to really use, which is kind of a summary of everything that we have addressed. What are the strengths and weaknesses of this text? Hello.
Ma'am, slide share has been stopped.
Is it stopped?
Yes.
Okay, it's working for me again. I'll just stop sharing and we'll start again. Thank you for that.
It was working.
Was it? Okay, sorry, sir. I'll just go ahead. Yeah. So what are the strengths and weaknesses of this text? What is your position on the subject matter? How does it differ from the argument in the text? How will you use this text? How does this text relate to other information you have read? This is kind of a summary of all those questions, okay? And this is actually, these set of questions will be really helping you with your academic reading more than your pleasure reading. These will be quite related to your academic reading. How is this text significant to your study? If you are conducting a project or something, what can be learned from it? What else needs considering? Which aspects of this argument would you like to investigate further? If you have these sets of questions, reading an academic article and making sense of it, or reading an actual academic book and making sense of it, or even listening to a lecture will be quite easy for you. If you get engaged in this, and let me tell you, overnight this cannot happen to you. You need to really get all your efforts into it. You need to practice it, and then further do the practice. And as they say, practice makes every human better. Now, I'm just going to close with this. This is a strategy that is between reading comprehension. That is actually bridging reading comprehension and speaking. Just like our Socratic discussion, but taking a little forward, or maybe just synthesizing everything together. This will help you in group discussions. So it's a speaking activity combining 5 essential self-monitoring reading comprehension strategies. So it's reading plus speaking. And Paris is for predict, ask questions, retell, infer, and summarize. So using all the visual cues, go back to what we have said in the beginning, predict and ask questions. What questions do you have to ask? We have already discussed that. Retell what is stated in the text, okay? And ask inferential questions and find answers in groups. A series of inferential questions we have already discussed. Summarize the text in your own words. These are all very important. And if you do this, you can actually be developing, you can actually develop quite a few sub-skills of your group discussion. So you can actually participate in a group discussion more effectively than ever before, because you have a track to go through, predict, ask questions, retell, infer, summarize. If it is a reading one, fair enough. But if it is actually, your placement point of view, you have the group discussions. If that is the case, then you have to really depend on the listening bit. So this is actually linking all that 4 skills except writing. But, if you take it everything that is being read is written, then that skill is also there. So when we have this, division of L, S, R, W, we need to understand that no skill is being learned in isolation. We have to just link everything together and learn it. So when I talk about reading, I cannot just divorce listening, speaking, and writing and say that, yeah, reading is the absolute thing and this is how you read. But to read something, there should be a written text. And when you read something, you need to write it so that others will come to know about it, or you need to speak about it. Others have to listen to it and comprehend. So all skills are quite interrelated. I hope these strategies will help you. And these are my references. Thank you very much. I am willing to take questions if you have, or you can write to me.
Thanks a lot, thanks a lot, ma'am. Myself, Joint Coordinator, Lieutenant Commander Rajkumar. Participants, we have a very nice lecture. We have exactly 10 minutes for the question. Rather, I can say 6 minutes only, but still I can extend it to 10 minutes. So please have your questions. Over to you, ma'am. Anybody facing internet issues, they can post their queries on the chat box also. I hope, ma'am, you are able to view the chat box.
Yeah, I'm looking at the chat box, but I can't see anything recent.
Right, ma'am.
So if you want to ask anything, you can. I'll just share the slides with you. If you are interested, you can use them. Otherwise, just trash.
Hello.
Hello.
I would like to ask a question, ma'am.
Go ahead.
Thank you, ma'am, for very nice presentation. I would like to ask that this Paris strategy, what you had been suggested just before the finishing, can be मतलब हम इस चीज को जो है अपने इंटरव्यूज में या एग्जाम वाइवास में भी इम्प्लीमेंट कर सकते हैं, बिकॉज जस्ट आपने जैसे बोला कि हम अपना जो पुराना एक्सपीरियंस होता है उसके बेसिस पे अपनी चीजों को वो करते हैं, तो आई कैन थिंक दैट आई कैन अज्यूम दैट विद जो इंटरव्यूज होते हैं हमारे, उसमें हम इस चीज को इम्प्लीमेंट कर सकते हैं अपार्ट फ्रॉम रीडिंग.
बिल्कुल, you can completely. I agree with you. That's why I keep on saying that, these things are not in isolation, and reading, writing, speaking, listening, everything is interrelated, and professional, academic, personal, everything, even when we think about Bloom's taxonomy as a teaching thing, I have presented it as a learning aid for you people. And also, sometimes those things can actually help us in resolving personal conflicts. That is why I brought in the example of design thinking as well. So it's not just that, we are doing it only for academic purpose or only to reading and reading in an examination point of view or reading a journal article. No, it's actually across different areas. So you're right, you can use that in interviews. Think about it. You will have to manage that spontaneity that happens there. You won't get the luxury of having a group discussion where turn taking can happen. Here in an interview context, you will be all alone facing all the interviewers. But then, getting these strategies automatized, that can actually help you way better. And of course, you can practice that. Thank you very much.
Ma'am, actually, okay, ma'am. Thank you.
No, you wanted to say something.
Hello.
Yes.
I am actually a practicing doctor, and I had appeared for many interviews. I was not aware about that, but now I am aware about that कि what actually happens in an interview or किसी भी वाइवा में हमारे साथ क्या होता है. We can predict कि मैं क्वेश्चन बोलूंगा तो सामने वाला क्या, मतलब मैं आंसर दूंगा तो सामने वाला क्या क्वेश्चन पूछेगा. So I have to summarize my answer in that aspect also.
Absolutely. Even, I was also not very much informed about how the students were feeling about it. But then when I started asking the students, they said the same thing. Yes, it is actually very important that, even if we say everything just in 1 or 2 sentences, we sum it up. Some of the teachers were excellent when we were in classes and all. Some of them were excellent. They say everything. We'll have a really great session, and sometimes it goes over. Even then, at the end, they'll have a 2 or 3 line summary that will be just, getting things fine for us. So that has to be there. Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much, Dr. Yogendra Thakur.
Thank you, ma'am.
I can see a lot of comments in the chat box. Thank you very much. I'm quite happy about that. Thank you. So I have shared the link to the presentation, so you can access that. Yes, somebody was saying.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Hello. I can hear you.
Yes, ma'am. I am Jaraj Bharata, ma'am. I am a director of DPS Play School. I am a question ask you कि जब हम इंटरव्यू लेते हैं किसी का तो हम ये सोचते हैं कि वो अगला आदमी बहुत पढ़ा लिखा है, लेकिन वो इस तरह रिप्रेजेंट नहीं कर पाता अपने आप को कि जैसे वो जिसकी क्वालिफिकेशन होती है वो रिप्रेजेंट नहीं कर पाता. तो हम उससे क्या उम्मीद कर सकते हैं कि क्या क्वेश्चन कर सकते हैं उससे?
That's a very difficult question because you are asking it from an interviewer's perspective, right?
Yes.
And it depends on it really depends on the kind of job that you are recruiting them to. I'll give you an example and we'll give you the answer to that. If you have listened to the bio note that Professor Binu Zakaria was reading out, you know that I work with aviation English bit.
Yes.
So once when we had a workshop, one of the participants said that in a testing situation, that is when the interview happens to give the pilot, give the job to this, air traffic controllers. There is one particular test segment where they have to really listen to certain recordings and act quite immediately, like listen to the command over the audio, using the audio, and then they have to speak back. So it's a very challenging kind of situation. And some of them really get petrified and they can't go forward, and they have to have a minimum scoring criteria to ensure safety of all the people who are going to be in the air. So this particular participant asked this question when we are testing, because she was from the language teaching background. So when we talk about language teaching, we talk about empathy, we talk about so many other things. So she asked, don't we consider the person's stress level? Shouldn't we think that the person is in a test situation, and therefore we have to be a little more lenient towards giving the scores? And then suddenly one of the chief persons in who was in the training department of air traffic controllers, he just stood up and said, we are dealing with the lives of millions of people. And that is what I have to tell you. If you want to be empathetic with this candidate who is not able to represent himself in the right way or herself in the right way, it depends on what type of job you are offering that you can express your empathy. So if you want to be empathetic, you can actually give something, give something that is that you think is quite, he is quite or she is quite capable of dealing with. Something like talk a little bit about your family background. It depends on what kind of interview you are conducting. So that is but your empathy, let me assert that empathy totally depends on the type of recruitment that you are conducting. If it's for air traffic controllers, you cannot be really empathetic.
Ma'am, just to share with you, since you have raised this topic, I am a naval fighter controller, ma'am.
Oh, great.
And I deal really millions of lives. This is the second most stressful job in the world after neurosurgery.
Of course.
And when after 8 hours, when we put off the RT, ma'am, the satisfaction which we did, and it was an incident-free for 10 years service. I was from the Indian Navy. So it really feels good. And as you said, that it is really stressful. So whatever situation you are, you have to adapt according to the situation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Nice to meet you, ma'am. Very good workshop.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Good guided.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions, please?
No, sir.
Is any Dr. Binu there?
Yes, I'm here.
Sir, please. Over to you, sir.
Okay. So, thank you, Karthika, for being a resource person for this session.
My pleasure.
And I think from the comments that are coming in the chat box, you can make out that they really appreciated your talk, and it was really useful to them, and they were able to learn a lot of things in this short span of just 1 hour. We also took some of your time in the beginning, and it was really nice to see you after a very long time.
Yes, of
and
course.
also proud to see you after a very long time, and really, really well there. So I once again express gratitude to you on behalf of the Department of English, on behalf of Directorate of Distance Education, and all our Director, Vice Chancellor, and everyone. Thank you, Karthika.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
So Rajkumar sir, we can.
Sir, the other resource person had already joined, sir.
Yes,
so
yes.
You can start, sir.
So we can start. The next resource person will also, as I said in the introductory remarks, she will also be talking about reading. I'm happy to introduce her to all of you. She is Dr. Monishita Hajra Pandey. She is also somebody who deals with English language. She is an assistant professor from the English and Foreign Languages University in Hyderabad. And even before joining that university itself, as you know, is a very reputed one. Even before that, she had worked at other prestigious institutes like IGNOU at New Delhi, then Ashoka University, and also Ambedkar University, Delhi. And she is somebody who has innovated and sustained a multilingual peer mentoring model, which she calls it's a language buddy scheme at Ambedkar University, Delhi. It was done primarily to tackle language alienation among learners, as well as academic challenges faced mainly by regional medium students in the higher education sector. She has more than 10 years of teaching experience, and she has also worked on several government projects. Her PhD is in the area of English language education from the English and Foreign Languages University at Hyderabad. Her research interests are classroom discourse, cross-linguistic transfer of reading skills, bi- and multilingualism, and teacher education. In fact, I'm so happy that she is there with us. When I told her about this program and requested her to be a part of it, she very quickly agreed and instantly accepted my request. And she said that she would be happy to interact with all of you. So thank you, Dr. Monishita, for agreeing to be a resource person for today's second session. I hand over the proceedings to you. You can start.
Thank you so much, Dr. Binu, and thank you for having me here. I joined like 10 minutes before my session was to begin, and I could immediately connect with the energy that this group has. I'm just thrilled to be here with you. So much of motivated energy is what I can sense in this virtual classroom. So before I start, today's title, of course, you had a session on reading, and we will be continuing that conversation. You may find some overlaps. You may be able to make certain connections with what Dr. Karthika talked about. So please do feel free to comment, make those connections, share what you gain from this session. And if you want to bring some insights from the previous one also, it would be great to see how you're looking at the entire, like both the sessions in conversation with each other. So let me share my screen and we can get started.
Yes, ma'am. Screen आ गई है. Screen है.
You can see my.
Hello. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just a second. I think someone else is sharing.
Just a minute, ma'am. I'm checking.
Okay.
Mr. Swamik, please stop sharing.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Your presentation is visual, ma'am.
Okay, so let's get started. So the title of today's session is Reading Strategies for Effective Communication. And the reason I named it like this is because many a times we feel that reading is something that is very passive. It is not an active skill, because when we think of communication, we mostly think of speaking and writing, because that's the way we actually express ourselves. But reading is an equally important skill that helps us write better, to express better, to understand other people's ideas, put them in conversation with us. And like in the previous session, it was highlighted how all these 4 skills have to work together for you to emerge as an effective communicator. So we'll focus on understanding what reading entails and how it can help us become better communicators. So moving on to the next slide. These are some of the objectives of today's session. We will begin with a very simple question. What is reading? We will try to look at some definitions of reading, and we will try to check those definitions with our understanding of what we think reading is, what has been our experience of reading so far. Then we will move on to different views on reading. We will tap into the theoretical understanding of the reading process. What do other scholars, researchers have to say about the reading process? Then I will take you through some reading strategies. Some overlap you may find from the previous session, like you were discussing the Paris acronym strategy. Some of them you may find them overlapping with some strategies that we will discuss, and some will be newer strategies, hopefully, for you to reflect on. And then finally, I will highlight some of the effective reader roles. So when we look at good readers, what kind of roles do they take up while they are in the reading process? So with that, we will kind of end the session. And if we have time, I'm hoping we will also get into some reflection as readers drawing from our experiences so far. Okay, now let's begin with the first question. What is reading? I have put 3 definitions on the screen, A, B, and C. I would like you to quickly read the 3 definitions and match them to the 3 types. So the first definition is a more neurological and cognitive view of reading, where the reader is an active participant. The second view of reading is a more cognitive view, where we are just looking at reading as a thinking process. And the third view is a mechanistic view, where we look at the reader as a passive recipient. So these are the 3 views on reading, and A, B, and C are the 3 definitions. Please take a couple of minutes and match the definitions with the views on reading. You can post your response in the chat box. Okay, the first response has come. 1C. Shenavas has posted 1C. So let's look at the third definition. Reading is a neuronally and intellectually circuitous action. So because it's talking about neurons, then obviously it's the neurological view, where we are looking at reading as a neurological and a cognitive process, enriched as much by the unpredictable indirections of a reader's inferences and thoughts as by the direct message to the eye from the reader. So this definition, as you can see, it juxtaposes the literal meaning that is presented to you through the letters and sounds of the language, and also it brings in your own interpretations of the text as a reader. So it brings both the aspects of reading into its definition. The next response has come again from the same participant, and you say it's 2A. Any other options? Any other responses? 1C is correct. 2A. B. That's right. It's 2B. Let's see why not A. It's 3A. That's right. So the responses are as follows: 1C, 2B, and 3A. Let's go through the other two definitions. So the second view is cognitive view, which looks at the reader as a thinker. So reading is just seen as a process that's happening inside your head, as a cognitive thinking process. And the definition that matches with it is B. Reading is no different from any other kind of thought. So when you're just sitting and thinking about something, it's the same thing when you're reading and thinking about it, except that with reading, thought is engendered by a written text. So without a written text, when you're thinking, it's a thought around something else, around an experience, around an image, around another conversation, around an object. But reading is thought around a written text. So the written text becomes the center of the thinking process. Reading might be defined as thought stimulated and directed by written language. So this is a cognitive view where the reader is a thinker, right? Let's go through the last view of reading, the mechanistic view of reading, which looks at the reader as a passive recipient. Okay, the definition is: understanding a written text means the reader is extracting the required information provided by the author as efficiently as possible. So this view of reading says that a text has a meaning. Okay, there is a singular meaning, the intention of the writer. And your job as a reader is to just extract that information of what the writer wants to tell you. So this is a mechanistic view because it does not look at the reader as an active participant. It just believes that the entire power of the text is with the writer, and the reader's job is just to get what the writer intends to give you. Okay, so thanks for participating. Let's move on to the next slide and complicate these definitions a little more. So I want you to now pause for a moment and think about these three definitions. We looked at a neurological cognitive definition where we gave agency and power to the reader and the writer. Then we looked at reading as a thought process, that it is nothing but a thinking pattern around a text, which is the cognitive view. And then we looked at the mechanistic view, which says that a text has a singular meaning, singular intention by the writer, and the reader is a recipient of that information. So I want you to think about these three definitions, and you can respond in the chat box. Which of these three definitions resonate with your understanding of the reading process? You're all readers, not just in English. I'm sure you also read in other languages. Which of these three definitions match with your belief about what reading is? Do you look at it as a mechanistic process, a cognitive process, or a neurocognitive process? Take a moment and then you can post it in the chat box. Okay, so if A is mechanistic view, B is cognitive view, and C is neurocognitive. So whichever view resonates with you as a reader, you can just put that letter in the chat box. Okay, Vignesh says cognitive. Many people say neurocognitive. Cognitive, neurocognitive. For me, A. Okay, Dharani says it's a mechanistic view. You read a text, you get the information that is meant for it. It's simple. Okay. Interesting. Yamuna says it's cognitive for you. Okay. So maybe the definition that resonates the most with us also reflects our relationship with the act of reading. Okay, so keep thinking about it as we move forward. The slides are changing, right? As I'm moving from one slide to another.
Yes, ma'am.
They are, right? Great. So now let's look at these three views of in a more visual format. So these views on reading can be looked at from the communication process point of view, which is the first picture here on the slide, which says that there is a message by a sender, which could be a writer or a speaker. So in this case, it's writer or even speaker, because nowadays we say we also read visual texts. So you can read a film, you can read a picture. So a visual input, not just textual input, but visual input can also become a part of the reading process, right? So the communication model says that there is a sender of the message, say the writer or the speaker or the sender, who encodes a message and puts it in a textual form. The text can be written, visual, or oral, okay? And the receiver, the reader is seen as a receiver, decodes that intended message, okay? This view of reading comes from the communication model to us. And as you can see, it is very similar to the mechanistic view, right? Where there is primarily the process is from the encoder to decoder. Moving on to the next picture, where you can see a jug and a mug. Okay, so this is called the Jug and Mug Theory. The Jug and Mug Theory says that the reader is the recipient, is a pure recipient of the meaning, and the text is the jug. So the text is the knowledge which is being poured into the reader, and the reader simply receives. So again, it is the mechanistic view which it shows us in a picture form. Now let's look at the third picture. What do you see here? There is a hill, and the meaning of the text is at the top of the hill. And there are different readers. You can see reader A is running up the mountain, and there is also reader B. Okay, she or he is also running up the mountain. Reader A's journey, as you can see, is very different from reader B. Reader A's journey is a straight path. Reader B's journey is through a lot of forest, and there are a lot of trees, and it's a different path that the reader takes to reach the meaning of the text. So this view of reading shifts its focus from the text to the reader. So in the first few, images, you can see that the primary focus is on the writer. The primary focus is on the text, on the creator of the text. However, in the second view, we give the agency to the reader. We say that the text is there and there is a meaning there, but how you reach the meaning is your personal reading process, which is different from every reader. So we both may be reading the same text, but how I'm going to read the text will be very different from how you're going to read the text. Because our journeys, our processes will be very different. And of course, this resonates with the cognitive view or the neurocognitive view, which gives the reader the primary focus in the reading process. Let's take this idea one step further. And again, I have a question for you to pause and reflect. Why do different people understand the same text differently? I may give you the same text, but different people will have different meanings out of it. What causes differences in our comprehension? What makes our role as a reader unique whenever we engage with the process of reading? What's that unique element that each reader brings to the text? Okay, again, take a few seconds to think about the question, and you can post your reactions in the chat box. Or if anybody wants to unmute and speak, that will also be great. We could collect a few responses. What leads to multiple meanings? What leads to multiple interpretation of the text? And what elements make each reader unique?
Reader's cognitive ability, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Reader's cognitive ability is very important for understanding of the topic or the text.
Okay. Reader's cognitive ability. Okay. Anything else? The process itself is different for each reader. That's right, which we saw through that hill metaphor, that you're running towards the meaning, but you're taking different paths. Okay. Perception. Right. So how you're perceiving the text. Now, why do we have different perceptions?
Yes, ma'am. Hello.
Yeah. Go ahead, Priya.
Yes, ma'am. Because actually, when we are reading the text, no, every individual will be having some experiences.
Absolutely.
Whatever we are reading, no, we will use to connect with what we know before that thing.
Absolutely.
So each person will perceive in a different way because of their experiences. Like in LKG students, people will teach 1, 2, 3 in another way. In first standard student, it will be different. But both things will be connected.
True.
Like that.
So I think the key word here is what you said, perception, which is varied because of our experiences. Okay, so the key word is experiences.
Yes,
Each reader is bringing a plethora of experience which are different from each other. That's the amazing
daily basis. That too in a daily basis.
Exactly. We are bringing our own knowledge systems. We are bringing our own language systems. We are bringing our own cultural knowledge. And our own understanding of the world, our prior knowledge about the theme that we are reading on, or other texts that we have read on similar themes. So all this
it's something pattern recognition, ma'am.
Yeah.
Pattern recognition about the subject.
Exactly. The factors like subjectivity, perception, psychology, exactly. So all these host of factors make the reading process unique. So this, in a way, questions or challenges the mechanistic view. So some of you said that for you, the text has one meaning and you have to get that one meaning. Okay. But maybe there is no one meaning in any text. Yeah, you can always look at the text from so many different perspectives. Okay, let's move on. Now, whatever all of you said about this reason for multiple meanings in a text, let us just try to put it in a vocabulary that is placed in some models of reading. Okay, so the top-down processing model of reading explains precisely this, why there is differences in comprehension, why the same text is perceived differently. And one reason, another reason, other than other reasons that you have pointed out, is each reader has a different expectation from the text. Okay, the text may be same, but my reason for reading it, my expectation from the text, my purpose for reading is very different from why you are reading the text and what you are looking for, what are your expectations from the text. So reader expectation varies from text to text, from reading situation to reading situation, and that's another factor which leads to multiple interpretations. Goodman was one of the top researchers who explained this way of looking at reading, and he called it a psycho-linguistic guessing game. So when we are reading, we are constantly making guesses. What are we guessing? We are trying to guess what the writer is trying to tell me. So it's a psycho-linguistic, because you also said the psychology of the reader. So you are bringing in your perception, your biases. Remember, as a reader, we also carry our biases. We want to read what we want to read. Therefore, when we talk about critical reading, which you did in the previous session, you try to get out of your bias as a reader and you try to ask other questions, right? You say, okay, maybe this is how I am looking at it. How will another person look at it? Therefore, collaborative reading. So Goodman says that reading is nothing but it's a range of predictions and guesses that you are making constantly about what the writer is trying to say. And you will never know whether you were right or wrong, because these are constant guessing game that's going on. You are making predictions, you're checking in some way. If it is a factual thing, you get an immediate answer. If it is a more interpretation of the meaning, you never know whether you're right or wrong, because there is no right and wrong all the time. So it's a constant guessing game at a cognitive level. That's how the reading process is a complex one. And therefore, the idea of one single meaning of the text may not be true. So some of the things that are involved in the psycholinguistic guessing game are constructing the meaning, which requires predicting content, text structure, sampling material, confirming your predictions, and correcting inaccurate predictions. So while we are reading, we make certain predictions. By the end of the text, we may want to go and change. Sometimes you will see that you read a story when you were in school, okay? And now you read the same story. The meaning will be completely different. Believe me. Try this out as an experiment. A story or a newspaper article, anything that you have read, say 5 years back, go back and read your own textbooks. Just go back and read your own textbooks that you read in your graduation days or something that you really liked and you remember reading. Go back and read it now. You will see that your whole experience has changed. You're the same person, but you have evolved in this time period, and therefore your predictions about the text, your expectations about the text has changed, because you have changed every moment from the last time that you read the text. Okay, so it's a constant process where you are also evolving with the text and the interaction that you are, involved in. Another view of reading, which precisely explains this multiplicity of meaning in reading, is the schema theoretic view. Now, the schema theoretic view is really fascinating. This is one of my favorite views on reading. It says that the main reason for miscommunication, miscomprehension is mismatch of schema. Now, what are schema? Schema are basically these cognitive structures in our head, in our brain, through which we understand semantic meaning. Okay. Now, when you read a text and you're not able to understand, the main reason would be that there are certain, information, certain schematic information in the text that you are unaware of. And I'll give you a simple example. Suppose I read a text about a Mexican cultural experience, which I'm unaware of. I don't know how the Mexicans, cook or whatever. So suppose I'm reading reading something which is about their culture, about the festivals, about their food practices, and if I'm finding it difficult to understand the text, there's a high possibility that I do not have the cultural information about the Mexican cuisine and festivals. That's why there is a hurdle in my comprehension. So schemata are mental stores, and there are two kinds of schemata. One is content schema. Like I said, maybe, for example, a Vietnamese doesn't know what is Diwali. So, you know, if I present a text on Diwali, the reader may be completely lost unless the reader makes an effort to find out what Diwali is, right? The cultural context of the festival, Deepavali. So these are content schema. Okay, and if you are very comfortable with the text, it means that your content schema is in place. You already know a lot about it, so you're not struggling. If you're struggling with the text, it means that your content schema is low. So you need to develop that. You need to do other things to fill up that schema so that your comprehension improves. The second kind of schema is formal schema. Now, formal schema is basically your knowledge about the language. Okay, so if you're very comfortable with the English language, you're able to identify the text structure, the word meanings, you're like very comfortable, your formal schema is very strong, then you know that will aid in your reading comprehension. If you are struggling with the language, then you will have to focus on the formal schema. Okay, you need to pay more attention to to individual words. You will have to develop word attack skills. Okay, we call them word attack skills, in the sense if there is a word which you don't understand, you have to go inside the word, you have to break it down and see, from where it's coming. So these metacognitive strategies will help you deal with your gap in formal schema. So as an aware reader, when you are reading a text, it's very important for you to spend some time to activate your schema. Don't directly jump into the reading text. Priya, could you mute yourself, please? There's a lot of background noise. Priya, please mute. Yeah. Okay. So a good reader would, when a reader is approaching a text, the reader, before plunging into the text, the reader will take some time to evaluate his or her own schema. That what is it that I already know about this theme? Does this theme seem very alien to me? Are there concepts here which are difficult for me to understand? Or do I already have a lot of background information about this topic? What am I bringing to the text? Also in terms of experiences, and also in terms of formal schema, what kind of a text is it? If it is a technical text, then you need to first fill up your gaps of jargons. You need to know the technical vocabulary and then approach the text. Most of the time, we do not strategize our reading. We directly get into the text and then we get demotivated. If I read a text on law, without doing my background work, I will get totally frustrated after 10 minutes of reading because I will not understand anything, right? So setting a purpose for reading, you need to first ask yourself, why the hell am I reading this? Okay, so why am I reading? You need to first ask yourself that question. Once you have set your purpose, you need to evaluate the matching of the schema of the text and your own background knowledge about the theme, about the text that you're going to approach. And Wallace gives a very interesting understanding of this variation from reader to reader. He says that there is never a total matching of schemas of the writer and the reader. So the writer's schema and your schema will never 100% match. And therefore, to say that I have got the perfect meaning that the writer wanted to give me is a misnomer. It's a dream. It will not happen because the writer's schemata and your schemata can never match 100%. And therefore, there is always a variation in meaning and interpretation. Now, let's move on to the last view on reading, which kind of foments all these arguments about subjectivity, perception, your own knowledge of the world, your schema variation, etc., etc. That is the interactive view of reading, and we subscribe to the interactive view of reading, which looks at the reader as a very active participant, where reading is not a passive skill. Reading is almost like you are constructing the meaning. Just like you construct a building, when you're reading, you're constructing the meaning. So you are actually creating. It's a creative process. Reading is a creative process because you're creating the meaning from scratch based on whatever you're bringing to the text. Therefore, the reader is again back into the focus. And I really like this last line that's there on the slide. I'll read it out for you. Pearson and Tierney says, "A thoughtful reader reads as if she were a writer, composing a text for yet another reader who lives within her." So, as an active, thoughtful reader, you are not a reader, you are a writer, because you are almost like composing the available text. You are recomposing the meaning for yourself, who is the reader. So the reader is also like a writer who is kind of, composing the meaning for himself or herself. So that kind of addresses the first two objectives of today's session. So we have discussed what is reading. We looked at 3 definitions. We reflected upon the definitions and tried to see where we stand. And then I tried to convince you that the interactive view of reading, moving away from the mechanistic view, is a better way to look at reading, because like we saw, no two readers are the same. And to explain this difference in our reading process, we looked at some of the models that provide us with the reasons, about reader expectation, which varies, about different schematas that we carry, different background knowledge that we carry, different experiences that we bring to the text, and both formal schema and content schema that we bring to the text. Being aware of these reasons that lead to different reading experiences will make us more empowered and aware about what we need to do to fill up the gaps in comprehension. Now we will move on to the next segment of today's session, which is about the reading strategies. Now, before I talk about the reading strategies, I want to put it out there that for us, reading is a process. So there are 2 ways to look at reading. Reading as a product and reading as a process. The product view means that how I read it is not important. What is the meaning of the text? That's the only thing I'm interested in. But what we are trying to say is, let's not just focus on the product. Let's pay attention to the process. How do we reach the meaning? That meaning that is there at the top of the hill. How am I going to reach the top of the hill? What will be my journey? What is the environment when I'm walking up the hill? I need to enjoy the fresh air. I need to enjoy the nature. I need to sit and relax a little before I reach the top. So we want to spend a lot of time understanding the reading process rather than jumping and reaching the top of the hill, which is the meaning. So the reading process, typically, we divide it into pre-reading, during reading, and post-reading. And a good reader is able to navigate through these different phases of reading in a very aware and conscious manner, right? So there are certain strategies that we need to be aware of in the pre-reading stage. So even before you get into the reading process, there are certain things that you can do at a cognitive level, And then, of course, when you're engaging with the text, that's a during reading process. And then post-reading, after you have read, there are certain things that you can do to enhance your reading experience. So let's move to the next slide. Now, having established the point that reading is a process for us, let us see what are reading strategies. That's the key word of today's session, that we want to know what are these strategies. Now, good readers are strategic readers. They may not be aware of it, or they may be aware of it. Depends. If they have been explicitly taught, then they may be aware. Many of you may be very good readers in English or in other languages, and it may be happening at a subconscious level, but you are strategic reader. If you're very comfortable accessing meaning of a text, you have been an active and strategic reader. Now, in today's session, what I'll try to do is specifically throw some light on these strategies. I'm not saying that you don't know about them. Maybe you already do them. But then maybe you're not aware of it, right? So we are just trying to raise our awareness of these strategies and check where we are with them. Now, what are strategies? Strategies are actions selected deliberately to achieve certain goals. Okay? So at this point, you may be doing something, but you're not aware of it. So what we want to do next is we want to become aware of what we are doing, ask why we are doing it, and see if it's useful for us or not, and maybe change some of our reading habits. Okay? So strategies are not subconscious. This is a difference between just reading efficiently but not knowing what makes me an efficient reader. So strategy is an action that is very deliberate. You're very aware and conscious why you are doing it, because you have a specific goal to achieve. Okay, that's the primary definition of strategy. So they are goal oriented, they are problem oriented, and they are reader initiated. Okay, strategies are initiated by readers. Nobody else can initiate it for you. You have to do it actively. Rubin says strategies are operations, steps, plans, routines used by learners to facilitate the obtaining, storage, retrieval, and use of information. So what we are trying to say is strategies are not involuntary. Strategies are not subconscious. Strategies are not something that just happens. They are very conscious, deliberate, goal-oriented actions that readers initiate to get to a particular point in their reading. Now let's move to the reading strategies. Now, could you tell me which of these strategies can we use in the pre-reading stage? Out of these strategies that are there on screen, which ones are for pre-reading? Remember, I said even before you start reading a text, you should do some things.
Preview your text.
Okay. Previewing a text is definitely a pre-reading strategy, right? Even before you start reading, a good reader will first preview the text.
Specify a purpose for reading.
Exactly. Specifying purpose is a pre-reading task. You can't read and then say, why did I read it? Has it happened to us? It has happened to me before.
Visualizing?
Visualizing the text can happen pre, it can also happen during. Some of these strategies can be both, okay? But specifying a purpose for reading is definitely a pre-reading strategy. And a good reader will always have a very clear purpose for reading. Because, why is it so? Because if you don't set a purpose, you're going to use the wrong way to read it. Okay, for example, I'll give you a very simple example. Okay, I'm going to read a newspaper article. Now, if I don't know why am I reading it, I may end up reading the whole article word by word, line by line, worrying about every word that is there or I don't know. It will increase my anxiety, and that's not the best way to read it, because I've not set a agenda for my reading. If I decide that, okay, I'm going to read this newspaper item and I just want to find out XYZ. Okay, I have a very specific goal. What am I going to do? I'm not going to read the whole text. I'm just going to find those portions which give me the relevant information and I'm going to move on. Okay, so good readers are strategic readers. They know why they are reading a text. For example, if I give you a cookbook, okay, and you want to find out the recipe for a dish, you're not going to go through each and every page Obviously you won't. You will find out the recipe that you're looking for and you will just go to that page. You will just look at the main ingredients and you will go ahead. So that's what a strategic reader does. The strategic reader does not do a superficial reading all the time, does not do an intensive reading all the time. Whether you want to read a text intensively, whether you want to do a close reading. Close reading is when you read word by word, line by line. And there is a different purpose for close reading. Okay. However, if you just want to find out the main points, you're going to do a skimming. Okay. So skimming a text, this is when your purpose is to just find the global meaning. Okay, you just want to find out what is the main idea of this text, what is the main argument of this text. You don't need to read word by word, line by line. Believe me, in 2 minutes you can skim through 5 pages and you can pick out the main idea, because the main idea is held in the introduction and in the conclusion. So you're not going to go to every section. You will look at the introduction quickly. You will extract the topic sentence. Topic sentence is that sentence of the paragraph which holds the main idea. You, as a strategic reader, you will know that, okay, I just need to find out what is the main argument of this text. You can do it in a time half than your friend who is reading each and every line, each and every paragraph, and that's not going to help. So the purpose of your reading is connected with what kind of reading you're going to do. If you want to know the global comprehension of the text, skimming the text is a better idea. Skimming means looking at the introduction, looking at the conclusion, looking at the first sentence of every paragraph, looking at sections, subsections, of course the titles, headings, and understanding what is the main argument, the main idea. Okay, so that's the skimming of a text. However, there is another way of reading a text which is called scanning. Scanning is what I was just telling you, where you already know what you're looking for. Okay, so it's not the general information, it is a specific information of the text. So suppose I give you a text and I tell you what is the census data of 2008. You're not going to read the whole text. You're just going to go to that section which has the census report and you're just going to tell me what you want. So scanning is very effective when you already know what specific information you're looking from the text, and you're not going to do a detailed reading. You're going to do a very strategic reading of okay, so specifying a purpose of reading is therefore very important, because as a reader you will make a host of decisions about how you're going to engage with the text. So this is a pre-reading strategy. The second is planning the reading process. This is again pre-reading, because you have to plan. So once you have a purpose, you're going to plan your reading. How much time am I going to devote? Which sections are important for me? Should I be doing a close reading of the entire text, which is not a good strategy? Which sections should I do a close reading? Which sections can I just skim and move forward? Okay, what are the main arguments of the text? What are the counter arguments that I can bring to this text based on my experience, my reading? So, planning the whole reading process, that's also pre-reading strategy. Once you've set these goals, you're going to read more effectively rather than just taking a text and beginning to read without any thinking going into it. The third is previewing a text, which some of you have said. It's a pre-reading strategy. Previewing is very simple. It's just looking at the layout, getting a feel of the text, understanding the genre conventions. In the previous session, the presenter talked about different types of reading, right? Like news items, reports, letters, emails, textbooks. These are all different genres, and every text has its conventions. So obviously a letter is going to look very different from an email. An email will look very different from a report. A report will look different from a minutes of a meeting. Minutes of a meeting will look very different from an opinion editorial in Hindu, right? So these are called genre conventions. And when you are reading anything, it's very important for you to preview the text textually, spatially, and also in terms of the structure, text structure. If it is an opinion article, then you know that, okay, it's going to it has a certain politics behind it. The newspaper has certain political, social agendas. So you will be able to become much more aware of the intention of the writer. You will be able to do your critical reading much better when you do a very critical preview of the text. So previewing from the physical, spatial previewing, looking at the text length, looking at the organization, titles, subtitles, headings, all that is, yes, previewing. But you also preview the text from the perspective of genre conventions, that what kind of a text is this? What do I already know about that particular kind of text? So once you activate all that knowledge, you are much more prepared to get into the text. Next comes predicting text content. What do you think? Is this a pre-reading or a during reading strategy?
During reading strategy.
It's both. It's both. Pre-reading because once you have looked at the headings, titles, subtitle, this, that, you have started predicting already. You have started setting expectations. I think this article will be useful for me because I'm looking for this information. The topic seems similar to mine. So you're already predicting based on your expectations. While reading, of course, you are constantly predicting what the writer will say next. What did the writer say before? Is there a mismatch? You're finding textual gaps. By the way, writers are not gods. Okay, they're not perfect. Every text has certain gaps. So as you are moving forward with your comprehension, you're also able to question the authority of the text, which many of us don't do. We think whatever is written on the text is just the perfect thing out there. There is nothing like perfect thing. You're constantly predicting, checking your predictions, and sometimes you can also be critical of the text that is presented to you. Okay, because there are always textual gaps. Then comes verifying the predictions. That, of course, is the during reading strategy, because once you're reading, you're able to verify, generate questions about the text. Generating questions about the text is both pre-reading and during reading. So before you start reading, it's a wonderful strategy to generate questions. Because if you generate questions about the text, you're already activating your schemata based on your previous reading experiences. And as you read, you will be able to find answers to it. And, it becomes a very interesting, very interactive process. So we are trying to say that reading is not a passive activity, it's an active activity. And how do you make it active? With the help of these strategies, by making it an intellectually engaging activity for your own self, and the power lies in the reader. Nobody else will do it for you. You are going to decide how your reading experience will be. If a reading experience is boring, then it's your responsibility. If a reading experience is thrilling, that's also your responsibility. So more than the writer, the power lies with the reader through these strategies. The next is notice and analyze text structure. I think I've already discussed it in the previewing thing, that other than the spatial previewing, you also preview the text genre and structure, and you notice, what are these features of this particular text. Visualizing, as you're reading, you may be visualizing certain things. That also kind of helps. And then let's move on to the last set of strategies. Locate answers to questions. This is again a post-reading or during reading strategy. You can do it while reading or post-reading. Compare texts to existing schemata. It's a pre-reading and a during reading. Generate inferences. What do you think? At which stage will you be generating inferences? Pre, post, during.
Post-reading.
Post, also during can be, right? Like while you're reading, you can also infer. You can also do it post. So post and while. Reread. Reread can happen while reading. It can happen post-reading. Monitoring. Monitoring your reading, trying to understand where you are. So that's also a during reading strategy. Making connections. This is a very interesting strategy, which some of you mentioned. This is also called intertextuality. So once you've read a text, or while you're reading a text, you think of other texts that you have read and you actively compare, and you put a conversation. You create a conversation between this text and the previous text. So that's making connections and exploring intertextuality, like two texts coming together in your head. Identify and notice discourse markers to understand textual relationships. So good readers are also aware of transitions. You will be able to notice where the writer is indicating a change of idea. How are paragraphs flowing from one to another? What is the logical reasoning in the text? How is the line of reasoning, created by the writer? You will become more and more conscious of the discourse markers. For example, connectors like moreover, however, first of all. So these transition markers, you will pay more attention to them. They will help you navigate through the meaning better. And finally, evaluating the text. The merit of the text, the usefulness of the text, etc., etc. Okay, I think I just have 10 more minutes because I want to leave time for questions and reflections. So all these reading strategies that we have looked at, they can be cognitive strategies. Mostly they are cognitive strategies, that is thinking strategies, or metacognitive strategies. Metacognitive are basically strategies that help you think about the reading process, right? So which help you monitor, take decisions, etc. And there are another set of very interesting strategies which are called social and affective strategies, which I think even the previous session talked about, that reading is not just you and the text. It is also about checking meaning with other people, discussing the text, being in a collaborative setup, putting that particular text in conversation with other texts, etc. So reading also requires affective strategies. Affective means your emotional aspect that you're bringing to the text. And of course, collaborative efforts to check what you understood from the text. How is it different from how others have understood it? So discussing the text with the larger community, that's also part of effective reading. Now I'm coming to the last fag end of the presentation. So having looked at all these different strategies and saying that, okay, a good reader looks at the reading as a process, not just as a product. There is a pre-reading stage where you do certain things. Then there is a during reading stage when you're aware of certain things, and so on and so forth. What are some of the effective reader roles? Okay, so Pearson and Tierney talks about 4 reader roles which are desirable for an effective reader to take up. And this is a kind of a summarizing of all that we have said in the last 1 hour. A good reader is a good planner. Okay, so you need to plan your reading process. You need to identify your goals, your purpose. You have to activate your schemata, your knowledge about the topic. You have to decide how you will identify with the text. What experiences are you going to compare with the text, right? Then, so that's the planner role, which is something that is desirable. The second is the reader is a composer. Composing, because you are kind of a writer. The reader becomes a writer because you are literally redoing the text for a meaning that you want to take from it. So you search for coherence, you look for textual gaps, you are critical as a reader. So all of that is the role of a composer. Then comes the editor. So reader as an editor. Generally, we think writer as an editor, but the reader is also an editor because he or she is analyzing his or her own interpretation of the text and meaningfulness and usefulness. So you are constantly editing your expectations, your understanding. And finally, the reader must take up the role of a monitor. Okay, so the monitor determines which of these roles need to be dominant at which point of the process. So in the pre-reading stage, you cannot be an editor, right? In the pre-reading stage, you have to be a planner. So you decide at what stage am I supposed to deploy what kind of strategy? What am I doing at which stage of the reading? So that's the role of a monitor. So that brings me to the end of today's session. And I was just thinking, I think we have some time. So having said all these things, I thought we could keep around 5 minutes for us to think about these strategies, reflect, Which of these strategies do we use a lot or we are very comfortable doing? Which of these strategies have we never tried or we have never explored, and we are very excited to go and look at those strategies when we read next? So some reflections from your previous reading experiences, if you could just take a moment to respond. You can unmute and speak, or you could use the chat box, but it would be great to listen to you where you stand with these reading strategies, your relationship with them, how many have you explored, which ones you really want to explore, and so on.
Thank you, ma'am. Student, all participants, the platform is open for any queries which ma'am has said and some reflections. Please go ahead.
Yeah, okay, sir.
Yeah, so you could share some reflections, or you can ask questions, because I mean, in terms of content, we have come to the end of the presentation.
Hi, ma'am. Could you suggest me if I go for the reading a comprehension and passage, and we have seen that we have some imagination power, and we are starting guessing the story would become on this way, and story would be this type of things. So, what type of the strategy we should opt for to reading that comprehension to find out the exact meaning of the comprehension? Because we have started let's say a story. You earlier said 10 years back you read the story, and now you are reading the story. There's much difference in that logic. So if we find out the exact logic at the same time, so what the strategy should apply for that one, and how we read the comprehension to reach out the exact meaning and reach out to clear their question respective of that comprehension.
Okay, thank you, Varun, for those two questions. I don't know if I got your questions exactly. So if you have follow-up questions, please feel free to ask. The first thing you said was about what strategies can we deploy to read stories, right? That's what you said, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. So story is a genre which is very interesting because it's narrative genre, right? And it opens itself up to multiple interpretations. So a story reading can be culturally driven. So the first thing is you need to first connect from where that story is coming. Yeah, in which cultural context has the story been written, and bringing other stories that you have read about it. First of all, what kind of a story is it? Is it a fictional story? What genre is it?
It's not about complete story of. It's about like on page paper. We read the comprehension and we answer some 5 to 10% against of that one.
Okay, talk about assessment, comprehension questions. Okay,
Yeah.
then let me talk about that. Someone is screen sharing. Yeah, fine. Okay, let's go to the examination situation. Okay, when you are given a comprehension passage which you have to read and answer, it's very important for you to strategize in the sense you need to first ask yourself what are the questions that have been posed to me, right? Because any comprehension. Yeah, am I audible?
Yes.
My voice is echoing for some reason.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, it's much better now. Yeah, am I audible?
Yeah, ma'am, you are audible.
Yeah, now it's much better. Somehow there was an echo. Right. So, coming back to the exam situation where you have to read a comprehension text and answer questions, the first thing is to look at the questions and find out what kind of questions are there. Yeah, once you have been able to understand what answers you need for the questions, then you can decide whether you need to skim, whether you need to scan, whether you need to do a detailed reading, because some questions are critical reading questions, for which you have to read the whole paragraph and you have to bring in your own interpretation. Some questions are factual questions. So to be able to understand what type of question has the examiner asked will help you decide the strategy. So there can be some factual questions, there can be some experiential questions, there can be some interpretive questions, open-ended questions, close-ended questions. So if you are able to pay attention to the questions and understand what is expected out of you, that might help you arrive at a desirable strategy when you are actually reading the comprehension text. Like I said, same kind of strategy throughout the text is not a good way forward. Like each and every word, each and every line, each and every paragraph, you can't read the same way, right? You have to vary how you are reading different parts of the text depending on what you want from the text. So to locate the answers, you also need to deploy different strategies depending on the kind of answers that you're looking for, the kind of questions that are posed to you. So that kind of an evaluation will surely help you tackle reading comprehension texts. Yeah, so someone is asking for the PPT. So while you, Pavitra, yeah. So Pavitra, here is the PPT. How to generate interest in reading the text, which I don't find interesting. Ravi, yeah, very genuine, very honest question. How do we develop an interest for reading, right? I would say start reading on topics that you're interested in. If you are struggling to develop a reading habit, it's best to begin with topics that are very close to your heart, where you're very passionately invested. Yeah, so identify your interest areas. Suppose sports, you're a sports enthusiast. Read as much as you want about sports. Pick up an autobiography of a sports person, you know, an iconic sports person, whatever it is. So I would say if you are a person who struggles with reading, begin where your interest lies. Once you have developed reading stamina, because reading stamina you have to develop it, you're not born with reading stamina, okay? So once you have developed reading stamina, then any topic is given to you, you will be able to approach the reading process with joy and excitement, because you will then go beyond the topic itself. You know, you will be very interested to know what it is. I mean, it's like developing curiosity, you know. So developing a reading habit is connected with developing curiosity, which has to begin first with your interest areas. So my suggestion to you is start where it seems most easy. That is, read what you like first. After you have developed a reading stamina, then you go to other, reading of other texts and other themes, and you expand your horizon of interest. Thanks for that candid question. How to consistently maintain a reading habit? So, you know, reading is almost also like a routine. You have to, just like writing, you know, reading, writing, both these skills, like Darwin talks about how writing, reading, literacy is not evolutionary, you know. So we are not really born with the capability to learn how to read and write. We are born with the capability to speak, you know. Speech is more evolutionary and basic, but not writing and reading. So writing and reading is difficult. By nature, it's difficult. It's almost like learning to cook, learning to bake, learning to swim, learning something, you know, new. So it is difficult. So first, I think we need to accept that reading, writing are difficult, and we need to put in effort. We need to set aside time. We need to get into a discipline. So you may think, other than all the reading that you're doing for your MBA and course, you should just think that, okay, once a week, I'm going to spend 1 hour where I'm going to read for pleasure. You know, so it has to begin with something small. It's almost like getting into an exercise routine, getting into a yoga schedule, or getting into going to a gym or something like that. So reading, writing, both, even writing, you know, and annotating is a very important skill. We couldn't talk about everything, but after you've read something, write something immediately about it. You can start maintaining a reading diary, you know, like you've read something, even if you've read a post on social media, right? Suppose you read a post on social media, write a couple of sentences about your reaction, your feeling. You'll be amused to see look at your own journal after a while. So it is something that you have to start at the level of a personal commitment, you know, to build your reading habit and stamina. While reading, my thought and imagination running quickly after the sentence, how can you stay focused on the textual content? Yeah, true. Reading is sometimes a meditative process, right? You need to really be with the text. I would say if you're a reader who gets distracted very quickly, it might be useful for you to take help of other modalities. So if the written text is not working for you, find out a video around the text. Watch the video first and then read the text. That will help you to focus better on the text, because after you have, you know, engaged with the theme through some visual material, through some documentary, through some YouTube, you know, instructional material, once you've explored the topic, the theme, through other modalities, and then you enter the text, you will be more motivated to read. So that also helps a lot. In fact, we do that for our students in class also. Students who are not very, you know, comfortable with reading, we first, you know, discuss all the topic through other modalities, and that's totally fine, you know. Once you have developed interest in that topic, then you can go into a deep and intensive reading. You will find your experience will be different. That is if you struggle with the written text. How to remember what we have read? While reading, I understand the text, but not recall after a few weeks. So one thing that I mentioned about annotation. So as you are reading something, quickly make a summary. Let it be a 2-line summary, 3-line summary, but write something. Don't just read and let it go and, you know, in thin air. Maintain a writing journal based on the reading that you're doing. That will help you to kind of recall better. Also, you know, recalling becomes difficult when you don't assimilate the information. When you look at the information as discrete. The moment you put the information in a context, you will remember better. Okay, so for instance, suppose, in fact, I had a text for all of you, but there's no time for it. This is a very interesting editorial on the price for an MBA. Okay, it talks about the fee structure and challenges of MBA programs. So while I was reading the article, there are a lot of data and, you know, a lot of statistics and a lot of information that I may not remember unless I put those information in context. Okay, so a particular MBA program costs so and so, you know, in a particular year there were so many MBA graduates. Those information may become very discrete if I don't understand them or put them in context. So one way to improve your recall, one is of course writing along with reading, summarizing, paraphrasing, annotating. These are the 3 writing skills that go hand in hand with reading and helps recall. Okay. The second is what I said, actively bring in a context, give a context to your reading. Then you will be able to remember the information more effectively. Okay. I think I have, okay, there is one more question from Jayalakshmi. How can we engage lower class students in reading? Are there any strategies? Okay, maybe you're talking about children and parenting. We find it so difficult to engage our children and get them into reading habit. Like I said, begin with visual. Yeah. So once they have kind of become very comfortable with the visual medium and you're not stopping them from engaging with the visual medium, you bring in reading texts for children or even adults with lower proficiency, which are visually appealing. Okay, so for instance, I'll talk about a genre that both adults and children love, graphic novels. Okay, many of us get put off when a fat book is given to you and you have to read 300 pages, a novel. We may not like it. So you choose a graphic novel. Graphic novels even adults can read. You know, they're amazing. They're very, very powerful, very imaginative, very creative, very visually appealing. So you can play around with the genre. You know, genre is in text type. Most of the time, we choose text types that are not motivating us. So you can change your strategy. Read short stories, 2-page stories. Tell whoever you are trying to encourage, they can begin with a short story. They don't have to read a long story, or they can begin reading certain social media debates. You know, they can listen to some debates on the television and read the opinion article. Or, you know, like I said, graphic novels is one genre that like people love to explore. And, you know, so vary the genres that you're choosing for yourself. If you are only reading one kind of text, it might not be working. Thank you, ma'am. Ravi says, how to remember what we have read. Okay, I think we have already answered that. I think we are almost reaching the end of our session, and lots of very, very interesting questions, I must say. It's the fag end of the day. You guys already sat through a session before me. So despite that, you stayed till the end. I really appreciate your patience and your excitement and enthusiasm with which you participated. And I hope that you will be able to find some interesting connections between this session and the previous one. And I wish you all the best in your journey of exploring who you are as a reader. So thank you very much for having me here. Thank you.
So you have done, madam?
Yes, I'm done.
Very good, very good. So our products are doing excellent outside. And then you need to train your products and make them excellent like that only.
Thank you, sir.
Very good. Thank you very much, really, because this is, dear student, this is an excellent opportunity, and we try to identify actually our own students, former students, and they are excellent actually faculties who are working in different actually central institutions. Both actually, the first lecturer and second lecturer, both are actually from the central institution. That to the product of the Pondicherry University. That's a great thing, of course. They're coming back and contributing to you, and you must make use of this opportunity. And I would like to thank both of them and to contributing, of course, helping us. And we'll be doing that. We would like to do some more. Maybe what I want actually, we want to make use of and do research, which will be helpful to you and helpful to us also.
Yes,
so
sir.
Because maybe we may have to sit and do maybe another some kind of a meeting, online meeting.
Yes.
So why can't we do a project on reading habits of these students?
That would be wonderful. I think a lot of Indian context has not been explored.
Recently, I've done a project, and the publication, maybe I'll share it with you. The reading habits of the research scholars and PG students, which we have done and compared, and that is coming in a peer-reviewed journal. Maybe I'll share with you that article.
Sure. Yes, sir.
And then I haven't actually prepared already. The questionnaire is there. We'll improve putting in your actually the inputs also, and we can just open design a Google form and send it, run it, and I could do it. That will be really useful. And you being a faculty, that will be useful there also. It will be useful for here also. And
Sure.
overall, the input, whatever is giving to students, that will be helpful to improve their reading habits.
Absolutely, sir.
Right? If you are agreeing, definitely we will do that. There's no problem, because reading habits, I've done 2-3 papers, not one. So we have done actually mobile reading habits, normal reading habits, all sorts of things. I have, I think, not 2-3. I have more than that. So this, I think, if you agree, definitely we'll do that. Soon, actually, we will interact with you. After the workshop, we'll do this. Not a problem.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Sure.
So
Thank you so much.
actually, once again, from the DD side, from the university side, and from my side, being a director, of course, I would like to thank you for sparing the valuable time, of course, and helping our students. And this is being a Silver Jubilee year, we will be doing actually many more. This is the workshop which is a 4 days. If I was with VP, that time actually he appreciated so much. And we recently, the last month, we have done 4 international classes. And the next week, we are going. Hello. Now, next month, actually, the first week, we are going to do another actually 4 international lectures. So like that, actually, several actually the national, international events, we are going to do that. And I'm happy our own alumni is participating in the university events, and I will contribute to that. So once again, thank you very much.
Thank you
and
so
students,
much.
Actually, tomorrow I think is the free day for you. Today is only 430 people attended. I expect tomorrow 750, 800, not less than that. So spread the message to all the students. Try to join. As I told you already, we will be giving a physical certificate, which is difficult for you to get. 1 week actually the workshop certificate, rarely you get it. That we are going to give. And at the university, from university side, we are going to give. That's really good for your future career endeavors. Okay. So thank you very much. Tomorrow, we'll see you tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.